Okay, hey world history, welcome back. Where we left off, we were talking about the boycott. Now, the 1936 Olympics that I had mentioned, it really put a spotlight on what Germany was up to during this time, and so there was a lot of international pressure for them to kind of knock it off. Like really stop these very um, prejudiced policies against the Jewish people. Okay. Moving on to number two, let's talk about the Nuremberg laws. Things began to get a lot worse for Jewish people. It started off by segregating them and making them a separate part of the population and forbidding them to go to certain places, community parks, swimming pools, movie theaters, libraries. It got to the point where they were requiring all of the Jews to register and wear the yellow patch, the Star of David that you can see there, picture of. And the Nuremberg laws were a whole series of laws against Jewish people. Now, we're not just talking about discrimination, we're talking about systematic discrimination, right? Discrimination by law, taking, specifically by law, taking these people's rights away. And, just a few things, restaurants, these signs started to show up, Jews verbatim, okay, Jews forbidden or not welcome here. Even to the point where there was a part of the Nuremberg laws was a Jewish person could not marry a non-Jewish person. It was called the Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor. Okay, so Jews really had a tough time in society because they were being targeted, not just by businesses, but by the government, and they were forced to wear these stars, to register, to carry paperwork, with them at all times. And they were in a constant state of, being targeted because they were Jewish people. Okay. Moving on, there was an incident in 1938 called Kristallnacht. And this is a German word that means night of the broken glass, where a few things happened, okay? This event was made to look like it was a spontaneous riot against Jewish people and Jewish businesses and Jewish churches. But in actuality, it was a planned event, and it took place all over Germany, okay? Here's a couple of things for your notes. In just about 15 hours, 100 Jews were killed. Over 100 synagogues, that's a Jewish church, were destroyed. 7,500, that's 7,500 stores were destroyed, and 30,000 Jews were arrested and sent to labor camps. Now, the labor camps were in operation by this point. Okay, so there was, to add insult to injury, to further embarrass the Jewish people, they were told by the government that they had to pay for all of this damage, okay, that took place during this night of broken glass. So you can see there from the pictures, the church being destroyed. You can see the broken glass at the storefront window. 900 Jews boarded a ship at this time in Germany, and they had set off. They had first went to Cuba. They had gone to different nations to try and gain entrance, and no country would let them in. So they ended up having to go back. And there were organizations, Jewish organizations, international organizations that were trying to persuade governments, hey, let our people in. We're really facing persecution at home. We're really facing, the end of our lives, the end of our livelihood, at home. Please let us in. So a lot of these countries in Europe took Jews in, but a lot of these countries were going to be taken over by the Nazis anyways during World War II, and they were going to be sent to camp. So some of the countries that took in Jews were Belgium, Holland, England, and France. Okay, let's talk about the ghettos. Number 4, stage 4, is they rounded up the Nazis, rounded up all of the Jews, and put them in a confined neighborhood with high walls and guard dogs and barbed wire, and no one could leave and no one could go in. And what ended up happening is these people began to slowly be worked to death and starved to death because getting enough food into these ghettos was a major problem. Okay, so there was a lot of violence in these ghettos. The Gestapo would come in and purposefully just to terrorize the people and make sure they knew who was in charge and to keep them in line and keep them from rebelling. They would come in unannounced. They would go to every 4th house on the street, pull out a man from every 4th house on the street, and shoot him in the street. Okay. Now, this was meant to terrorize the people and keep them in line and keep them from rebelling or revolting or fighting back. It was really a thing to break their will. So these ghettos were just getting started here, because these ghettos are going to be used as a staging ground. They're going to be used as just a preliminary to what is going to come next. And a lot of these ghettos are going to be emptied, and these people are going to be sent on trains to the concentration camps. Okay. Concentration camps or labor camps were in operation all the way from 1933. I referenced them earlier. After Kristallnacht, some of the Jews were taken, and they were in operation all the way to 1945. There were 2 different types of camps. The concentration camp that I'm talking about here in stage 5 is a labor camp. Now, we'll talk about the execution camps in a minute, but these labor camps were for anybody that threatened the government's power, anybody that threatened the Nazis. These were not just Jewish people that were getting sent to these camps, right? They were political rivals, homosexuals, handicapped people, gypsies, communists, religious leaders, teachers, musicians, and artists. So there's all these people in society that become a target because if you're one of these groups that I mentioned, you're a nonconformist. You pose a threat to the government, and just like in Mussolini with his black shirts, or Stalin, and the way they all persecuted their political enemies, Hitler and the Nazis were the same way. Okay, so these camps were built near major cities. They used the rail lines for easy transport. They were isolated enough away from the city centers to not attract too much attention, and most Germans, if they knew what was going on, they looked the other way. Okay, many did not, especially at first, they did not know what was going on. So let's go to get into the last couple of stages here. Okay, the deportations to from the labor camps and from the ghettos to death camps or extermination camps, camps that were designed and built for mass murder. And you can see here in the pictures, in the top right, the top left is a gas chamber, right? In the top left, you see a mass grave being dug with thousands of people that had been murdered being buried. You see on the bottom right, you see the ovens. right, that they used to cremate the bodies. On the bottom left, those are gold teeth that they pulled before they executed these people. Okay, these death camps were a part of what Hitler called the final solution to the Jewish problem. And from 1942 to 1945, there was an all-out effort to exterminate every single Jew living in Europe, man, woman, child. And it was catastrophic. It was something that was horrible on a scale that is very difficult to comprehend. Okay, historians tell us that somewhere around 6 million Jews were killed during this time in mostly Poland. I don't know if you saw where all the ghettos were. I can skip back real quick, but a lot of these camps, I'll go ahead and show you because this will come up later. Okay, you'll need to know this. This bottom right here, this is, this area here is Poland. Okay, that's where a lot of the camps were, Eastern Europe, between Germany and Russia. Okay, so there were a total of 6 death camps in operation. Most of the Eastern European Jews were being just wiped out, right? The ones who could not run, the ones who could not hide, the ones who believed that, hey, this is the 20th century, right? They're not going to kill us. And many people believed, even as they were herded onto train cars like cattle, they still didn't believe, that, oh, this is war, right? We're just being put away for the wartime. We're just being sent to camp. We're just being sent to labor camp. We may have to suffer for a year or two, but eventually we'll be fine. It was a lot more serious than that, right? I want to tell you a couple of stories just real quick about certain countries that refuse to give up their Jews, because Denmark is a fantastic example of an entire country, an entire nation that were taken over by the Nazis very quickly. And Hitler, as this final solution and deportations began to take place, he demanded from the government of Denmark, hey, give us your Jews, deport your Jews. Okay, we're bringing them back to Europe, Eastern Europe. And Denmark, basically gave Hitler the finger. And the government hid their Jews. A lot of them, thousands were saved. Almost the entire Denmark Jewish population was saved because they fostered out the Jewish kids to different families. They changed their names. They changed their addresses, in the government record. So it's a really amazing story of an entire country, telling Hitler off, saying, we're not going to give up our people, to you. All right, let's wrap this up. We've got another minute here. The liberation in 1944 to 45, Allied troops that were either coming from the east from Russia or later in 1945 from the west, from the Allies, from the United States and British troops that were coming across, they began to find these camps, and what they found was absolutely devastating, right? The evidence and what had taken place was so massive that the Nazis could not destroy the evidence. Okay, there was about 300,000 people that were liberated out of a camp. And many of these people did not survive, sadly, because they were too far gone. They had diseases. They were too malnourished. But I'm going to have to cut the video here. This is our last slide. I did want to tell you about a movie about the Holocaust. If you want to look this up and watch it, it would be a fantastic watch. Okay, I'll see you guys next time.